So with that, I'll move on to, I think this is my last slide. So this speaks a little bit to what I just talked about with networking and applying. And I think within those two realms, and if you look at your kind of broader career trajectory, you can get pretty creative with what you do if your ultimate goal is to get into a top consulting firm or some sort of desired consulting firm that may not recruit from the school that you're at today. So the conventional route that most people take, starting from undergrad all the way through the first several years of their career, although this is typically the conventional route that most people talk about, I would argue that it's fairly rare that people go through this conventional route. But that is, you go to a target undergrad, you have a consulting internship, you get a job at a top consulting firm because you're at that undergraduate. You then go on to get your MBA at a target MBA. You may or may not even do a consulting internship while you're there. And then from there you would move on to either the same consulting firm or maybe even a different consulting firm after your MBA. So that whole trajectory kind of lays itself out just based on the fact that you were at a target undergrad. Unfortunately, like myself, there's a lot of people who aren't at some of the target undergrads or some of the target MBA schools and don't have that ability to interview with some of those firms. So I've laid out a couple of ideas of what I'm calling the unconventional routes down below. So I'll just go through these one by one. That green one up in the top left there. So let's say you're at a non-target undergrad and you're unable to kind of get your foot in the door at a desired consulting firm, like maybe a Deloitte, maybe Accenture, maybe McKinsey, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one thing you might want to try is go work for a niche consulting firm. Those firms are often very, much, much smaller. Sometimes they're even just a handful of people. And sometimes they recruit more broadly, meaning they accept a lot more applications from a wide range of people with different backgrounds, different educations, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe during your undergrad you develop some skills that are applicable to what that niche consulting firm does. And so once you join a firm like that, because again it's easier to get your foot in the door there, you can spend a couple of years there, and if you still have the desire to go work for a consulting firm that was originally on your short list, then you can more easily make the move into that consulting firm as an experienced hire. Experienced hires, it's I would argue it's easier to get your foot in the door as an experienced hire. And especially because you now have consulting experience, it would be easier to justify that move. The orange one in the bottom left-hand corner, and this is very much an unconventional piece of advice. And it's actually something I did when I was going through my job search, is don't let the fact that you're at a non-target undergrad or even a non-target MBA school kind of limit you in terms of where you can go and who you can meet in terms of the recruiters and so forth. So let's say you're at a school that's down the street or several miles from a target school where some of the firms that you're interested in joining are having a career day there. Well, I would just go. Show up with your resume in hand. Don't mislead anyone with the fact that you're not a student at the school, but it still gives you that opportunity to meet face-to-face with some of the folks in those firms, get your resume in their hand, meet with a recruiter potentially. So it's definitely a high-risk advice, and be cautious as you do it. But I think it's if you're willing and able to do that, it kind of shows a lot about who you are. The other one, so the light blue one in the upper right-hand corner, and again, I just use an example, if you're coming from a non-target MBA, one thing you might want to do is just acquire marketable skills. And that's a combination of potentially doing self-study type stuff, or maybe going to work for a nonprofit, or maybe going to work for yourself where you can develop those skills. The consulting world is becoming more and more focused on what skill set the people that make up the firm have. because essentially consulting is in the business of buying skills from the market and then reselling them to their clients at a premium. That's essentially what consulting is. So if you have those skills that the consulting firm is looking for, then you're almost a shoo-in as a experienced hire into a desired consulting firm. And those skills can be very specific. If you look at the computer science world, there's a lot of different new and upcoming skills, especially with cloud computing. If you look at the energy industry, there's a lot of skills that are very marketable around smart grids and things like that. I mean, if you really spent the time to learn those skills on your own, that's a very powerful thing you can use to get into your desired consulting firm. The last one I'll touch on is corporate experience. And it's a very conventional route for experienced hires to take. And that is, this is applicable for both undergrads and MBAs, is go get a job in the corporate world, which again, I would argue is less competitive, and it's easier to get your foot in the door, because I imagine even if you're at a non-target consulting university or school, you're probably still having corporations come to your school to interview. So go ahead and take that job. It'll give you an opportunity to learn about the corporate world. You'll definitely develop some consulting type skills that just about everyone develops when they're in the corporate world. And it gives you just an opportunity to explore a little bit more and kind of understand what's right for you. Let's say, for example, and I'll just use HR as an example because that's the area that I consult in, but if you got a corporate job in HR, there's a ton of opportunity within HR to learn a lot of different skill sets that are very valuable to consulting firms. So we're having a lot of disruption in our marketplace when it comes to HR technology. So go into the corporate HR and learn about the new technologies that are going on. And before you know it, as soon as you put those skills on your LinkedIn webpage, you'll have recruiters from consulting firms coming after you because of those skills that you've developed. So I can't say enough about acquiring the right skill set that makes you valuable to consulting firms. I think that's very, very important.